Gero here for Umbra Games with a review of Killing Floor 2, played on PlayStation 4 but also available on PC. This game's main distribution method on PlayStation is digitally. In fact, it's even a PlayStation Plus free game for June 2017. But a limited print was made and sold exclusively through Gamestop. Killing Floor 2 follows in its predecessor's footsteps, released in 2009, which advertised itself as co-op survival horror. You and up to 5 friends, or randos, in Killing Floor 2 can choose from 10 different character classes and go into battle against Zed forces. Gameplay takes place in what has come to be known as a Horde mode, providing a map where waves of enemies will attack during multiple rounds, in this case grotesque undead creatures. Killing Floor 2 adds a bit of MOBA, or multiplayer online battle arena, to its formula by rewarding you with currency for various feats in each kill, and in between rounds a random vending machine on the map will open up, allowing players to sell gathered weapons and buy new ones in a quick minute. Prices increase significantly for each better version of every weapon. Character classes are differentiated by their perks, each one having various bonuses and buffs and performing certain actions, and more specifically, proficiency with various types of firearms. As you reach every 5 class levels, you open a new choice between 2 perks, with which you can alter your choice infinitely between battles and even once per round. Class specialties that stand out the most are things like the Berserkers, able to regenerate life through melee damage, serving as a tank, the Demolitionist ability for other players to interact with him and gain a grenade per round. Support class provides ammo the same way. The Commando makes invisible enemies have a red outline to fellow players. And the Medic has some very necessary boosted healing power via darts expelled from special firearms. Your character is limited in inventory by weight, each gun adding more pounds as it increases in power, making your quick choices in between rounds even more demanding. Each of the undead monsters, or Zeds as they're known, have vulnerabilities to different firearms, so having a balanced team can be important in the harder difficulties. The Survivalist, which I spent most of my time with, has medium proficiencies in all weapons that make her extremely flexible, and that she can get boosted damage from any firearm the team may be missing. There's a definite usefulness curve though, as early game, probably pre-15 or 16, I found myself outdamaging everyone, until they got their later perks and were highly specialized in their class weapon, and the usefulness began to dwindle somewhat. It does take an extensive amount of time to level up a character class, starting to feel extremely heavy once you reach the mid-teens. Extremely slow progression doesn't really help the staying power or replay value of the game. A moderate pace to let you move through multiple classes before you get tired of the game would have really been optimal. There are a decent number of character models to choose from, each with their own one-liners, but out-of-the-box customization is pretty limited. Now, we would randomly receive loot boxes that contain more cosmetics and weapon skins, but they required a key to open, which in everything we saw required real money to purchase. There are quite a few different sets of map assets. Through our few months playing a couple times a week, we saw one major update that even introduced a few new maps for free. All maps have multiple vendor stations, and several different options of places to stand your ground, some which fared better than others. The pace of the waves actually gets really intense. There were several times we'd find a place we thought we could defend well, but it's easy to get overwhelmed quickly, so you almost always need an escape plan, or sometimes just to keep moving. Every character has the ability to weld doors shut, but you have to be careful. It can trap you in just as easily as it traps the monsters out. If a teammate dies, they can't be revived, but can choose to have their camera follow around the remaining teammates. If the team is victorious, all dead players will rise for the next round, while at the mercy of the team to hopefully pick up all those weapons and give them back, rather than selling them for quick cash, assuming they have the inventory space. One of the key mechanics for Killing Floor 2 for successful combat is a concept known as Zed time. Occasionally, when any player on the team scores a headshot, the game will go into a brief slow motion for all players, allowing them to adjust and make better shots during that time. The worst part is finding yourself reloading when it initiates, which happens quite often. Most of the max level 25 perks each class obtains includes an augment, allowing them to do additional things or receive additional buffs during Zed time. Now, there are only 2 bosses that will appear as the final round, for which all intents and purposes is a random selection. Both have healing powers and will regenerate multiple times during the battle. The game really could have used a few more bosses, especially because the number of enemy types feels pretty robust for any given match, but knowing the path leads to one boss or the other only, once you've beaten them efficiently, can cause a bit of premature staleness. There are only 2 modes of gameplay to choose from online. You'll more than likely spend a couple of rounds in the Zed mode, where the teams are split up and you take the role of randomly generated Zeds to assault the other team, and then you switch. The other is the more basic Horde/survival mode. There are 5 difficulty levels for it, and the last 2 get really tricky. You can change the number of waves in a round, which we thought might help us have more time for money collection and powering up, but turns out each wave has a reduced number of enemies, and thus generates lower amounts of income, to where we netted close to the same by the time we reached the boss, the only variation being increased match time. You can play solo, offline, and it's an easy way to level up your class to at least get your first perk before joining online games, but it's definitely not what the game was designed for. If you choose to play solo or online though, the game doesn't feature anything resembling a campaign, as they're all independent rounds where all maps and difficulties are available from the start. The game could have increased its replay value more by including additional modes or mechanics, or even a checklist of the maps you finished and which difficulties, but that could just be me. I like my endings, I like my checklists. The game's main maps have collectibles that are associated to PlayStation trophies. I say collectibles, but technically you just shoot these items wherever you can find them. Each trophy is to find X number in a stage, but we often found the stages had more than X, so you didn't have to find them all, just that certain number. But if you don't care about trophies, this activity will provide no benefits. The graphics are functional, and overall provide a great atmosphere. The Zed designs are actually pretty disturbing if you take the time to examine them. The music has some original as well as licensed industrial metal tracks, not something I'd listen to in my spare time, but it matches the game and its content quite well. The only major glitch we found, well, more me actually, seemed locked specifically to the Survivalist. Now, as I mentioned, the Survivalist is kind of a jack of all trades, and as such begins each match with a random starter weapon. Sometimes it's the rifle, sometimes a shotgun, and on special days, it's the shovel the Berserker starts with. So my first trip to the vending machine was at least replacing my starting weapon. Since no one else had to change tabs, they didn't have this issue, but just switching class tabs didn't change the item, and on the Survivalist tab, the shovel is listed at the top. This caught me off guard more than once. Some rounds after filling up on bullets and armor, there just wasn't a whole lot of money left to go around. The crew didn't believe me at first, and then it kind of steadily became a joke. Overall, we spent a decent amount of time on this game, and if you have some friends that can snag the PS Plus version of the game especially, it's worth spending some time. Rated as an independent round, map-based first-person shooter, Killing Floor 2 hits a 71 out of 100, with 50 being an average game. This is Gero for Umbra Games. Thanks for watching. As always, feel free to hit the subscribe button to receive notifications on new videos, or follow me on Twitter @UmbraGames.